Courage over comfort. It sounds simple, but let's be honest. Most of us spend our lives chasing comfort. We want to feel safe, to avoid risk, to stay in spaces that don't challenge us too much. And at first, that seems like the right thing to do. After all, why would we intentionally put ourselves in uncomfortable situations? Why would we walk into uncertainty, choose vulnerability, or face challenges head on when we could just take the easier road? But here's the truth. Comfort zones don't build warriors. They build spectators. And you were never meant to be a spectator in your own life. Every person who has ever achieved something great, who has broken free from fear, who has lived a life of victory, has had to make the same decision, to choose courage over comfort. Courage is standing up when you'd rather sit down. It's speaking truth when silence feels safer. It's pushing forward when every part of you wants to quit. It's not the absence of fear, it's what you do in the face of fear. That's the difference between people who live fully and those who only exist. I want you to think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, when you accomplished something that made you proud. I guarantee those moments weren't when everything was easy. No, they were the moments when you had to fight for it. Fight for it? The moments when doubt crept in, but you kept going anyway. The moments when fear whispered, "You're not strong enough," and you responded, "Oh, watch me." Courage is an act of defiance. It's looking at the voices of insecurity, self-doubt, and fear and deciding they don't get to run your life anymore. And here's the thing, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is a whisper that says, "I'll try again tomorrow." Too many people think that courage has to be this big, dramatic moment, like running into battle or making some grand, life-changing decision. But courage often looks like something much smaller. It looks like getting out of bed when you feel defeated. It looks like sending that email, having that hard conversation, setting that boundary. It looks like taking the first step even when you don't know where the path will lead. And the problem is we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort. We've been told that feeling afraid means we should turn back. That if something is difficult, it's a sign we're not meant to do it. But that's a lie. Growth is uncomfortable. Strength is built in discomfort. Every time you step outside of what feels safe, you become stronger. But here's what we don't talk about enough. Courage comes at a cost. When you choose courage, you will lose things. You will lose approval from people who liked you better when you played small. You will lose relationships that were built on your silence, not your truth. You will lose the illusion of certainty because courage forces you to step into the unknown. And yet, even with all that loss, courage will give you something even greater, freedom. The freedom to be fully who you were meant to be. The freedom to stop living according to other people's expectations. The freedom to pursue the life that was meant for you. Living a life of victory doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. It means you won't let fear make your decisions. It means when faced with the choice between courage and comfort, you will choose courage every single time. Because comfort may feel good in the moment, but it will never lead to growth. Comfort will keep you stuck, keep you small, keep you from stepping into your power. But courage will stretch you, it will refine you, it will make you into someone who refuses to be defeated. And if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. The people who live the most fulfilling, victorious lives are not the ones who avoided failure. They are the ones who failed, got back up, and kept moving forward. The ones who faced rejection and didn't let it define them. The ones who were scared but did it anyway. So today, I want you to ask yourself, where in my life have I chosen comfort over courage? Where have I let fear make my decision? And most importantly, what would happen if I chose differently? Because at the end of the day, courage is not something you either have or don't have. It's something you build. It's a muscle you strengthen every time you decide to show up, even when it's hard to show up, even when it's hard to secular. Every time you choose to keep going, even when you're tired. Every time you decide that fear does not get to have the final say. So choose courage. Choose to step into the discomfort, to embrace the unknown, to push past the fear. Because the moment you do, you stop being a spectator. And you start living in victory. Vulnerability. It's a word that makes most of us uncomfortable. We associate it with weakness, with exposure, with the risk of being hurt. We spend so much of our lives trying to build walls around ourselves, convincing the world, and sometimes even ourselves, that we have it all together, that we're strong, that we don't need help. But here's the truth. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the purest form of strength. It takes more courage to be real than it does to pretend. It takes more strength to ask for help than it does to struggle alone. And yet, we live in a world that tells us to hide our struggles, to mask our pain, to only show the parts of ourselves that look polished and perfect. But let's be honest, perfection is an illusion. No one has it all figured out. No one is walking through life without wounds, without doubts, without moments of uncertainty. We all carry things. Pain, fear, insecurities. But the ones who truly live victoriously are not the ones who hide those things. They are the ones who acknowledge them and keep moving forward anyway. We've been taught to see vulnerability as a risk, and it is. But it's the kind of risk that leads to freedom. It's the risk of showing up fully as you are, without the mask, without the performance, and trusting that you are still enough. That your worth is not based on how strong you appear, but on who you are at your core. The enemy, the thing that tries to keep you small, wants you to believe that vulnerability will break you. That if you admit you're struggling, people will turn away. That if you show your scars, you'll be rejected. But the reality is, vulnerability is the key to connection. It's the bridge between isolation and belonging. Because when you have the courage to say, I'm struggling, you give others permission to do the same. You create space for honesty, for healing, for real relationships built on truth instead of performance. And let's talk about performance for a second. How many of us are exhausted from pretending, from putting on a show, from keeping up an image that isn't real? That kind of life is draining. It steals your joy, it keeps you trapped, and eventually it breaks you. Because you were never meant to carry that weight. The irony is, we admire authenticity in others, but fear it in ourselves. We love the people who are real, who own their flaws, who share their journey with honesty. And yet, we tell ourselves that if we do the same, we'll be judged. That if we let people see the truth, they'll walk away. But here's the thing. The right people, the ones meant to be in your life, will never leave because you were real. They will only draw closer. And the ones who walk away, they were never truly for you to begin with. So many of us live our lives behind a mask, afraid of what will happen if we let people see the truth. But what if I told you that the life you're meant to live, the victory you're meant to experience, can only be found when you remove that mask? When you stop pretending and start allowing yourself to be seen fully, completely, and unapologetically, it won't be easy. It will feel uncomfortable. You will have moments when you wonder if it's worth it. But I promise you this, nothing is heavier than the weight of living a life that isn't yours. Nothing is lonelier than being surrounded by people who don't actually know you. And nothing is more freeing than stepping into the truth of who you are and knowing that you are still loved, still enough. Living victoriously doesn't mean pretending you're never afraid. It means admitting when you are and showing up anyway. It doesn't mean you never struggle. It means you refuse to struggle alone. It doesn't mean you have to be strong all the time. It means you understand that real strength is found in honesty, in openness, in allowing yourself to be seen. We think we have to fight our battles alone, that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But let me tell you something. The strongest people are not the ones who stand alone. They are the ones who know when to lean on others. They are the ones who build a community, who surround themselves with people who lift them up, because life was never meant to be lived in isolation. Victory is not a solo journey. It is a shared experience. The moment you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the moment you let others see the real you, something shifts. The fear loses its power. The enemy's voice gets quieter. And you begin to step into a freedom that can't be taken away. So here's my challenge to you. Stop hiding. Stop pretending. Stop letting fear convince you that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of. Start showing up as you are. Start letting people see the truth of your journey. Because victory isn't found in perfection. It's found in the courage to be real. And the moment you embrace that, you step into a power that can't be shaken. You become unstoppable. You become free. And that is the definition of living in victory. The stories we tell ourselves shape our reality. They determine how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and ultimately, how we show up in life. The problem is, many of us are living according to a story that was never meant for us. A story written by fear, by past failures, by the opinions of others. A story that says you're not good enough or you'll never make it. Who do you think you are to even try? And because we've heard these stories for so long, we start to believe them. We carry them as if they're the truth. We allow them to dictate our choices, our confidence, and our ability to step into something greater. But what if I told you that those stories are not facts? What if I told you that the enemy's greatest weapon against you is not your circumstances, not your past, but the narrative you've accepted as truth? Think about it. Every time you've held yourself back, it wasn't because you weren't capable. It was because you believed you weren't capable. Every time you've played small, it wasn't because you weren't meant for more. It was because you convinced yourself that more wasn't meant for you. And that's the real battle. Not the one outside, but the one happening in your mind. The good news? If you have the power to believe the wrong story, you also have the power to rewrite it. You have the ability to change the narrative, to take back control of your life, to decide that from this moment forward, the story you live by will be one of victory, not defeat. It starts with awareness. You have to recognize the lies that have been playing on repeat in your mind. The ones that say you're not enough, that you're too broken, too late, too far gone. Because those lies, they are keeping you stuck. They are keeping you from stepping into everything you were created to be. And the longer you believe them, the more they shape your reality. But here's the truth. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not what happened to you. You are not the words that were spoken over you in anger or ignorance. You are so much more than that. And the moment you decide to stop letting those things define you is the moment you take your power back. Rewriting the narrative means choosing to see yourself through a different lens. It means replacing I can't with I will. It means shifting from I am unworthy to I am deserving of good things. It means recognizing that every setback, every failure, every difficult moment was not a sign of your limitations, but a chapter in your growth. Do you know what separates those who rise from those who stay stuck? It's not talent, it's not luck. It's not having the perfect conditions. It's the willingness to challenge the old story and write a new one. The willingness to stand up and say, I refuse to let this define me. And I know it's not easy. Changing the way you see yourself, the way you talk to yourself takes work. It requires intentionality. It requires choosing every single day to reject the thoughts that keep you small and replace them with ones that empower you. It requires reminding yourself over and over again that you are worthy, you are capable, and you are enough. But here's what I need you to understand. Rewriting your story doesn't mean ignoring your past. It doesn't mean pretending that the pain, the struggles, the disappointments never happened. It means choosing to see them differently. It means understanding that those things may have shaped you, but they do not define you. They are part of your story, but they are not the final chapter. The enemy wants you to believe that your story is already written, that you are destined to repeat the same cycles, to stay in the same patterns, to never break free. But that is a lie. You hold the pen. You get to decide how the next chapter unfolds. And the moment you embrace that truth, you become unstoppable. So, what's the story you're going to tell yourself from this moment forward? Are you going to keep believing the one that keeps you in fear, that keeps you doubting yourself, that keeps you playing small? Or are you going to step into a new story? One where you rise, where you fight, where you refuse to be anything less than the person you were created to be. Because here's what I know. The people who truly live in victory are not the ones who never struggled. They are the ones who took their struggles and turned them into strength. They are the ones who refused to let failure be the final word. They are the ones who looked their past in the eye and said, "You do not own me." You have that same power. You have the ability to change the story, to shift the narrative, to reclaim the life that was always meant for you. But it starts with a decision to stop believing the lies. A decision to take back control of your mind. A decision to rewrite the story, not tomorrow, not someday, but today. Because victory isn't something you wait for. It's something you step into. And the moment you change the story, you change your life. Resilience is not built in moments of ease. It is forged in the fire of struggle, in the storms of life, in the moments when you feel like you have nothing left, but somehow find the strength to take one more step. Victory doesn't come from never falling. It comes from getting back up over and over again. But let's be honest, when you're in the middle of the storm, when life has knocked you down so many times you've lost count, resilience is the last thing you feel. You feel tired. You feel defeated. You wonder if it's even worth it to keep fighting. You start questioning whether you're strong enough to make it through. This is where the enemy tries to break you. Not in the good times, not when everything is going well, but in the moments when you're vulnerable. It whispers too much for you. You'll never recover from this. You might as well give up now. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can let the storm define you, or you can let it refine you, or you can let it refine you. You can surrender to the weight of it, or you can decide that no matter how hard it gets, you will not be defeated. That's what resilience is. It's not the absence of hardship. It's the refusal to let hardship have the final say. Think about a tree standing in the middle of a storm. The wind beats against it, the rain pours down, the branches bend under the pressure. But if its roots are deep enough, if its foundation is strong enough, it will not break. It might lose a few leaves, it might sway, it might even look battered and bruised when the storm passes. But it will still be standing. That's what resilience looks like. It's not about coming out of every battle untouched. It's about coming out stronger. It's about understanding that even when life knocks you down, you have the power to rise again. That every challenge is not the end of your story, but a chapter in it. And let me tell you something. The strongest people you know, the ones you admire, the ones who seem unshakable, they didn't get there by avoiding the storm. They got there by walking through it. They got there by enduring the kind of pain and pressure that could have broken them, but instead, it built them. You don't build muscle without resistance. You don't build endurance without testing your limits. You don't build resilience without going through things that require you to be strong. And I know that's not what we want to hear. We want life to be easy. We want the victories without the battles, the rewards without the struggle. But that's not how growth works. The things that make you the strongest are often the things that challenge you the most. So if you're in a season of struggle, if you feel like life is testing you beyond what you think you can handle, I need you to remember this. You are not breaking, you are building. Every hardship is making you stronger. Every setback is teaching you something. Every challenge is preparing you for what's ahead. But resilience isn't just about enduring, it's about how you rise. It's about choosing to believe that even in the darkest moments, there is still hope. Hope. It's about refusing to let failure be the final chapter of your story. It's about standing back up even when you don't feel ready, even when you don't feel strong, and saying, I'm not done yet. And I know there will be days when you don't feel like fighting anymore. Days when you wonder if it would be easier to just give up. And I want you to know, it's okay to have those moments. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to cry, to rest, to take a breath. Resilience is not about pretending to be invincible. It's about knowing that even on your worst days, you are still capable of standing up again. So what does resilience look like in real life? It looks like the single parent who keeps showing up for their kids, even when they're exhausted. It looks like the dreamer who keeps pursuing their goals, even after rejection. It looks like the person who has been hurt, but still chooses to love again. It looks like you right now, still standing, still fighting, still refusing to let life defeat you. Because here's the truth, storms don't last forever. The pain you feel today is not permanent. The struggles you're facing right now will not define you. One day, you will look back at this moment and realize it didn't break you, it built you. So if you're in the middle of a storm, if life feels heavy, if the weight of everything is pressing down on you, I want you to take a deep breath and remind yourself, I am still here. I am still fighting. And I will not be defeated. Because resilience is not about never falling. It's about rising every single time. And that right there is victory. Fear is the greatest thief of destiny. It whispers lies that keep you from moving forward. It convinces you that you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that failure is inevitable. And if you listen to it long enough, fear will keep you trapped in the same cycle, waiting, doubting, hesitating, while life moves forward without you. The truth is, fear doesn't need to chain you to stop you. It only needs to make you hesitate. Because every time you delay, every time you shrink back, every time you let fear decide for you, you give away your power. You allow fear to write your story instead of taking the pen into your own hands. We tend to think of fear as this massive, overpowering force, but in reality, fear is just a suggestion. It's a thought. It's a story your mind tells you about what could go wrong. And if fear is just a story, that means you have the power to rewrite it. Fear is always going to be there. It's part of being human. But the people who live in victory are the ones who feel the fear and do it anyway. They don't wait for the fear to disappear before they take action, because they understand that courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it. Think about the moments in your life when fear held you back. The times you wanted to speak up but stayed silent. The opportunities you walked away from because you were afraid to fail. The dreams you put on hold because the risk felt too big. And now think about what could have happened if you had pushed past the fear. Think about where you would be if you had taken the chance, if you had trusted yourself enough to try. Fear will always present itself as protection, but most of the time, it's just limitation disguised as safety. It wants to keep you where you are because where you are is familiar. It's predictable. It doesn't challenge you, but nothing great ever comes from staying comfortable. Growth happens outside of that comfort zone. Victory happens when you step into the unknown, not when you stay where it's safe. One of the biggest lies fear tells you is that you have to be fully prepared before you take action, that you need more time, more skills, more confidence. But let me tell you something, You will never feel fully ready. Readiness is a myth. The most successful people, the most victorious people, didn't start because they were ready. They started because they refused to let fear keep them stagnant. They decided that their dreams, their purpose, their future were more important than the discomfort of uncertainty. And I get it. Stepping into the unknown is terrifying. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you lose? But let me ask you this. What if you win? What if this is the moment everything changes? What if the risk is worth it? Fear will always ask, what if it goes wrong? But you need to start asking, what if it goes right? Because the truth is, you will never know unless you try. And if you fail, good. That means you're growing. That means you're learning. That means you're one step closer to getting it right. Failure is not the enemy. Stagnation is. Fear wants you to believe that failure is the worst thing that can happen, but the real tragedy is never trying at all. The real loss is waking up years from now and realizing you let fear steal your future. So, what do? How do you fight fear? You move. You take action. You stop waiting for confidence and start building it through action. Because confidence doesn't come from thinking about doing something. It comes from actually doing it. Every small step you take weakens fear's grip. Every time you push forward, even when you're afraid, you remind fear that it does not have the final say. Fear will always be there, but it does not have to control you. The difference between those who live in victory and those who don't is not that they never feel fear. It's that they refuse to bow to it. They refuse to let it dictate their choices. They refuse to let it rob them of the life they were meant to live. And now, it's your turn. You have a choice to make. You can let fear continue to run the show, or you can take back your power. You can stay where it's comfortable, or you can step into the unknown and trust that you have everything it takes to succeed. Because at the end of the day, fear is just a voice. And the question is, will you let it speak louder than your purpose?